Alors bonjour, je m'appelle Josiane Ménard, je suis attachée de presse à la Banque du Canada et aujourd'hui je vais présider la conférence de presse. Governor Poloz will be pleased to take questions for about 20 minutes. Before asking your question, would you kindly state your name and affiliation? Please use the wireless microphone that if you raise your hand, my colleague here will bring the microphone to you. Please keep it to one question and one quick follow-up question to ensure we give everyone a chance. We'll see how much time we have left for a second round. The governor will be happy to take questions in both official languages. Alors, avant de poser vos questions, je vous prierai, s'il vous plaît, de vous identifier. Je vous demanderai également d'utiliser le micro sans fil que ma collègue va vous amener et de vous limiter à une question et une sous-question pour commencer. Libre à vous de poser vos questions dans la langue officielle de votre choix. So, Governor, you ready?
Oui.
Alors, Monsieur Gagnon, de TVA.
Alors, Marcel Gagnon, de TVA, Sherbrooke. Ma question, écoutez, vous avez dit, M. Poloz, hors de question d'exercer quelque contrôle que ce soit sur le taux de change. Et sans, je veux dire, si vous aviez en quelques mots à résumer les principaux avantages d'une politique comme celle-ci, que me diriez-vous?
Oui, c'est essentiellement un ingrédient clé pour une politique versée le taux d'inflation. Si vous avez une cible pour le taux d'inflation, c'est pas possible de poursuivre ce cible dans un sens indépendant en même temps qu'on essaie d'influencer le dollar canadien. Les deux sont indépendants dans ce sens. Alors, pour nous, nous avons un but spécifique, ça c'est le taux d'inflation, et c'est tout.
Permettez-moi, évidemment, ce sera probablement d'autres questions qui viendront en anglais. Dites-moi, la grande question que se posent les gens qui nous écouteront ce soir ou enfin au cours de la journée, c'est d'abord et avant tout de savoir, est-ce que les taux d'intérêt seront conservés à peu près dans les taux que l'on connaît en ce moment ou faut-il s'attendre à une augmentation des taux d'intérêt? Je vous écoute.
Mais je m'excuse, mais aujourd'hui n'est pas une annonce de la politique monétaire. C'est réservé pour le 22 octobre. C'est la date de notre rapport sur la politique monétaire. Comme on a dit il y a quelques semaines dans notre FAD, nous sommes neutres en ce moment, c'est-à-dire que les données économiques vont influencer la balance des risques à un côté ou à l'autre. Pour le moment, nous sommes à l'aise avec un taux d'intérêt comme ça et nous sommes confiants avec cela. Éventuellement, on va voir tous les ingrédients de notre reprise, mais il y a beaucoup de choses à faire là, avant ça.
Monsieur Quinn?
Greg Quinn, Bloomberg News. Just wondering, what is it that led you to give the speech today on the currency and to address the idea, as you said, that the Bank of Canada doesn't try to talk down the dollar?
Well, it is an extremely important variable in our understanding of the macroeconomy. And of course, habitually, as a central banker, we do not actually comment on its specific level or anything like that. So in between those two things, I think there's a lot of space for us to explain better to people why it is that it fits that way, why a flexible exchange rate is absolutely crucial for us to get our job, our primary job done. And so it seemed an opportune time to do so, especially given the nature of the crowd here in Drummondville. It's a crowd that I know well, in a sense. It's a very export-oriented crowd, and an area where fluctuations in the currency matter a great deal. So I thought it was a good time to explain that to them as fulsomely as I could.
As you're aware, there's a referendum in Scotland, and the currency there has come into play. Canada is a nation that has had its own separatist movement and debate about the role of the currency. Can you offer any comments on what voters in Scotland should be thinking about before they cast their ballots, based on Canada's experience with this?
No, no comments to offer those folks on that. They're getting plenty of advice from others. Thank you.
Nirmala Menon.
Nirmala Menon from the Wall Street Journal. Governor, your interest rate statement 2 weeks ago reiterated that neutral policy bias. But with data coming in pretty strong, sort of like this morning's manufacturing data, it's fair to say almost no one believes that you will cut rates. So is it not time to drop that characterization?
Well, we'll give all of the new data full consideration in our next NPR and talk to you about it on October 22nd. And let the fad stand as it is. But I will just comment that you're right about the recent data having been encouraging. But I just remind you that they've been encouraging several times over the last 5 years. And what happens next still is a question mark for us. You need a lot of data like that to establish a new trend. And not just that, but the follow-through, which is to Canadian investment and the creation of new jobs. Those things take time, and we've experienced serial disappointment for several years in a row. And so I would say that there's still a strong case to be waiting and seeing. In any case, we'll come back to the full analysis of all that.
The other thing is you left, in that rate statement, you said that the housing market has been stronger than you'd expected, and you dropped that reference to a constructive evolution of household imbalances. Does that mean that you've become less confident that things will work out as you had thought they would? Could you explain why, specifically what concerns you, and also whether you think it is time for further macroprudential measures?
Well, it was merely an acknowledgement of the data that we'd received during the summer, and an acknowledgement that those data had been, I would have to say, slightly stronger than we'd expected. The slightly is fairly important. They weren't clearly out of line with our underlying story, but we know that the housing sector experienced a rough winter just as all of us did. We were expecting a bounce back. We got that. And when you add it all up, the bounce back was a little more vigorous than our models had suggested we should see. But that leaves open a lot of questions. Is it a sustained upward move or anything like that? But what we had to acknowledge was that our assessment of the household imbalances risk, in effect, had not changed over the course of the summer, whereas prior to that, it had been very gradually diminishing, seeing through all the noise. So these data never go in a straight line, so we'll have to watch as we go through the fall to see what the actual trend emerges from that downturn and the rebound, which is primarily a weather fluctuation. I have no comments on, macroprudential or anything like that at this stage. We do think our base case remains that the pieces are in place to have a gradual reduction in household imbalances. Nothing has really changed in that. It's just that we didn't observe any reduction over the course of the summer.
Salima Shivni, CBC.
That's right, Salima Shivji from CBC. On Scotland, what do you see as the potential impact of a yes vote in that country? How worried should we be?
Yeah, I don't think I'll comment on that. We will take the macro situation as it's presented to us, and we'll if events change, we redo our forecast and see what we thought. But as you can tell from all the things that have happened in the last couple of years, geopolitical events are extremely difficult to analyze. So it's really a case of watching your data flow and making sure that you're fine-tuned around it. So I have no forecast to offer on that.
You mentioned in your speech that the energy sector it won't be enough alone. So if that's so, where do you see potential growth?
So yes, the comment in the speech is to remind people that, you know, a bit of an upturn in non-energy exports doesn't mean the job is done. In fact, we lost a lot of export sales during the downturn. And energy exports, of course, continue to grow and have grown a lot more, and we expect them to continue. But when you do the arithmetic around that, it's not sufficient to fill the entire gap that opened up in the wake of the global recession. So that regrowing or rebuilding process seems to be just getting underway, primarily because investment spending has started to pick up in the United States. It's a really core, it's not just GDP in general is not enough. Like, it's got to be the right kind of GDP growth in the U.S. to really have an impact on our export numbers. So we're starting to see some of that, which is good, but to remind people that there's a long way to go before we'll actually get all the way back. And so the third part of that is that we expect, as has always been the case in upturns, when the upturn gets true momentum, people start creating new companies. And those new companies are primarily exporting companies. And they have 2 employees and then 6 and then 20. They get their big contract and they have 50. And that's where the new jobs are created primarily too. That's an important feature of most upturns that has not yet really gotten underway. So we're watching for that to occur, and that would be the whole pie, if you like. Energy, much stronger than before. Non-energy, gathering its momentum back, and new exporters entering the marketplace. And that's our base case, that's Mother Nature at work, the natural sequence that I talked about.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that, Ross Marrows, Canadian Press. You talked about in your speech that export jobs have not picked up, they've gone down 2013. How far after a pickup in exports do you expect jobs to come back?
Well, it's fairly hard to put that into a macro, a model type answer. I mean, historically, the lag could be as long as a year, but of course, it's all gradual. So I don't want to put a pin in the timing. But we've got now 5 or 6 months of better export performance in the categories that we identified, you know, back in the Saskatoon speech. So we're finding some encouragement with that. We know that the overall employment picture has not yet really, it hasn't turned more positive. It's been a little bit of a plateau. So we're watching for that to happen. And meanwhile, productivity seems to have gone up a fair bit in 2014, first half of the year, which, fitting all that together, suggests that the companies that are so far adding to growth are those that can add to those sales without actually hiring more people. That's kind of the loose interpretation, as we would put it. And so it needs to get to the point where now they're telling the customers, I can't deliver that export order for, I don't know, 6 months, let's say, as opposed to 3 months. And the buyer says, well, no, that's too slow. Okay, so they promise 3 months and they hire more people. They make another investment. They start actually expanding their company. That phase doesn't seem to have started yet. And that's when so the degree of uncertainty around that is so high, I can't make a prediction around it. We've been waiting for it for some time.
So are we talking, though, a year after the recovery? Or is
well, again, you're trying to pin me to a date, and I can't. I mean, I suggest that you need to think of it as slow enough that it's better to think of it as a year as opposed to months or quarters. It's long. It's slow. Because a company has to see that and say, I'm confident that that demand is going to continue, sufficiently confident to make a new investment, new equipment, whatever, and hire 10 more people. Those kinds of decisions are more difficult today than they were 10 years ago because of what we've been through. So there's that lingering uncertainty. It's the main headwind that we identify globally, not just in Canada. The companies are holding back from making investments and expanding employment because they just aren't sure if the global recovery is real. It's that serial disappointment thing. So it's a very hard question to answer. In fact, I can't answer it, but I just give you a suggestion that it's generally slow.
Thank you. Do you believe that there is any slack in the labor market in Canada that is not being measured by the unemployment rate in terms of either part-time workers who would like full-time work or perhaps the number of hours worked? So basically, are people underemployed because employers are not giving them enough hours?
I believe there is some, but it's very hard to measure. So it's more by way of anecdote or looser facts. This, by the way, was the primary subject when we were in Jackson Hole. It's not just us, but in fact in the U.S. it's an even more complex question. So we don't have all the answers for that with the best academic minds on the subject. So, but my short answer is that we estimate that there are something like 200,000 youths who have withdrawn from the workforce. We believe for discouragement reasons. Many of them may have stayed in school longer instead of being in the workforce, but if you can't get a job, that's door number one, I think. So about 200,000, say, and perhaps another 100,000 or so in the prime age category, maybe a bit more, who are also discouraged. But it's very hard to look underneath and see who is taking, like we know part-time work has gone up a lot, and according to surveys, a lot of people, that's what they want. So how do you disentangle all that to answer your question concretely? But if we generate, say, 10 or 15,000 jobs per month in a good expansion, if there's 200 or 300,000 people who are discouraged, that's lots of room to grow. And so we're not at the stage where we have to worry about the decimal points of your question. There appears to be capacity measured that way, just as there is in the way we traditionally measure it, which is in output space. Some capacity got destroyed during the downturn, which reduces the level of potential, and now we're waiting for people to start investing to gradually build it back up again.
Okay. And just one follow-up question regarding your speech today. How you outlined sort of the second scenario you outlined, where the Canadian economy would be lagging the U.S. How likely in that second scenario would you hike rates later than the Fed?
Well, that's sorry, I get it. That's why that example was there. The one I talked mostly about was the case where we were trying to keep the exchange rate from rising when oil prices are rising. But a similar situation would be where, let's say, the U.S. has sufficient momentum that it's beginning to raise interest rates. For us, doing our analysis, we might look at the situation and say, well, we have room to grow. We're waiting to see if we're going to get closer to our inflation target and so on. So that's what an independent monetary policy is. You do your own analysis, but if you were targeting the exchange rate, chances are you would need to react immediately, more or less in lockstep with global interest rates. And perhaps if you did that, and it wasn't quite time, then your inflation rate would fall below your target and you would not be doing your job. So that's why an independent monetary policy is so important. That kind of case would illustrate it perfectly. And so, you know, in the real world, then you might say, well, let's pick our timing. Our timing is our timing. The interest rates in Canada are already 1%. That's already quite a bit above what the U.S. rate is. Mm-hmm. So there's some room to talk about where we should be going when the time is right and when the rest of the macro story is coming together.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Oui, et ce sera ce sera les dernières questions. On vous écoute, M. Dostie.
Bonjour.
M. Dostie va être en français.
Claude Dostie, Finance et Investissement. M. Poloz, vous avez dit que par choix, vous ne vouliez pas modifier les taux d'intérêt pour influencer la valeur du dollar, mais vous dites aussi que, un peu par nécessité, la Banque du Canada est un peu incapable d'intervenir sur les marchés de change à cause, dites-vous, de la profondeur des marchés. Depuis quand est-ce que la Banque du Canada se considère incapable d'intervenir sur les marchés de change? Et j'aimerais aussi vous entendre sur, disons, les actions durant les dernières années de plusieurs autres banques centrales qui interviennent massivement sur les marchés de change. Le Japon, la Suisse, Taïwan, Israël, etc.
je ne vais pas dire quelque chose que selon les autres banques centrales. Chaque pays diffère aux autres. Mais pour nous, notre expérience suggère que c'est très difficile d'influencer le dollar dans un sens concret, juste temporairement peut-être, avec les transactions dans le marché. Ça peut-être donnerait le marché une espèce de signal, peut-être. C'est presque équivalent à une intervention verbale. C'est presque la même chose. Et habituellement, ces efforts ont juste des effets très temporaires et ça ne vaut pas la peine parce que les marchés, franchement, les marchés sont plus capables que ça de déterminer le taux de change équilibre. Alors, pour nous, c'est pas notre intention d'utiliser ces efforts. Si on utilise la chose qui peut avoir un effet, ça c'est un changement du taux d'intérêt avec une cible pour le taux de change. Et ça aura le problème d'abandonner la politique monétaire indépendante en poursuivant le taux d'inflation. Alors c'est très simple en effet.
Mais depuis quand diriez-vous que la Banque du Canada se pense incapable, disons, d'intervenir? Ça n'a pas toujours été le cas. Là. La Banque du Canada est déjà intervenue, a probablement déjà cru qu'elle pouvait avoir un impact. Vous diriez que...
Mais dans le passé, la Banque du Canada a eu un programme d'intervention continu. C'était juste pour ajouter du profond, de profondeur au marché, parce que c'était un marché un peu mince. Là. Ça, c'était dans le passé. Et c'était juste pour smoothing, c'est-à-dire d'être là, comme j'ai dit dans mon discours, dans une espèce de cas d'urgence. La banque serait là d'avoir une transaction en n'importe quel côté du marché, juste pour être présent, d'ajouter de liquidité dans le marché. Ben, ça, c'est juste dans une situation où le marché, en effet, ne fonctionne pas. Évidemment, ça c'est très rare. Mais c'est dur d'avoir cette possibilité dans la boîte, là. Mais ce n'est pas un élément habituel de notre politique monétaire.
Merci beaucoup. C'est tout le temps qu'on a. Merci.
Une autre question?
Dernière question. Vous étiez là il y a 5 ou 6 ans, ici à Drummondville, sous le couvert de l'exportation et développement Canada.
C'est ça, il y a 6 ans.
Il y a 6 ans.
Oui.
Vous êtes là aujourd'hui, évidemment, votre première conférence ici en sol québécois depuis votre nomination à la Banque fédérale. Dites-moi, Drummondville, parce que...
Ben, j'ai fait un discours à Montréal il y a 8 mois, j'oublie, en décembre. C'était en décembre. Et il y a quelques mois, en choisissant les venues pour l'année, ben, moi, franchement, j'ai suggéré Drummondville. Ben, je pense que c'est pour parler aux entreprises, les petites et médiums entreprises. C'est vraiment un groupe très riche en histoire. Dynamique, c'est ça. C'est une région très intéressante dans le sens... et la question centrale de notre prévision, c'est les exportations dans ces catégories et ils sont très présents dans le groupe aujourd'hui. Alors, c'était une décision assez facile.
Mr. Poloz, just one last question in English for the folks in Toronto. Why is it that the private sector is not producing more jobs?
Well, the private sector did produce a lot of jobs in the immediate aftermath of the crisis, the recession. And I think we kind of hit sort of a plateau area, which was there's nothing too bad about it. It's just that we're not experiencing the next layer of growth. And that next layer has been waiting for an actual recovery in our export performance. So I think the short answer is that the export recovery hasn't been strong enough yet to make it feel sure and to be a true trend. And so far, as I indicated, companies who already are there have been able to add to their sales without really creating too many jobs, which is exactly why we had really good productivity numbers. I guess it was a week ago, or I forgot, but there was a number just a week ago, I guess, that was very good. So that is good, but what will happen next is you'll get more of the job creation that comes with extra capacity, because we believe that companies, for the most part, are more or less at capacity in that sector. So we'll see. But it's all part of you're baking a cake, right? And the ingredients are there. It takes a certain amount of heat in the oven for it to all come together.
OK, merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Merci tout le monde.